All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Another edition of Will and Friends, this time the real estate edition. And I have good friend Jeff Terreros from Good Steward Property Management. Thanks so much for joining us again, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. With this quarantine, we get to try new things that we haven't before, and happy to help. I got some notes here, so if you see me staring off to the side, it's just me reading my notes
All good.
based
All
on,
good. Hey, I like the haircut, man.
Yes, as I was sharing with you, I was trying to schedule my time to go get a haircut, only to realize, hey, we can't get it done. So the wife took some time, and I like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's good. You don't need to like style it, prepare it. Just wake up and start the day.
Especially with a newborn, I didn't realize how much I like this. When you have your kid trying to play with your hair, you're always like, oh, I got to go put some more water on it. But not anymore. She can she can jump on my head, and any time of day, I'm good to go.
How old is your newborn?
Well, not newborn so much anymore. She's just over a year old.
Oh,
Just
wow.
over a year.
How's she doing? How you guys doing with her sheltering in place?
Good. We got a 3-bedroom place, so one for us, one for our daughter, and then the third one for the home office. So I kind of close my door and get to work on this. But my wife, she takes care of her most of the time.
That's awesome. Awesome. So talk to us. It's been a couple of weeks since we last talked about property management. I'm sure a lot of things have been coming up, new things, whether it be COVID related or not. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing or what you're experiencing out there from a property management side.
Yeah, and that's one of the items that I wanted to discuss, because as much as the marketplace is changing right now, there's always going to be the fundamentals of property management or, say, real estate sales, right? And with all the talk, sometimes it's good to just focus on the basics of, hey, these are the things that we're going to be dealing with, regardless of COVID-19 or not. So with that said, we had talked about the resident life cycle. I'll share with you some numbers here in regards to COVID and how that's affected us. But the basics don't change. And that's one of the items that I want to focus on today is everything that you can think of that has to do with property management is going to fall into one of the 4 categories that we discussed before: leasing, residency, lease renewals / annual maintenance, and move outs. And if you get really, really good at having your own policies and procedures, if you're an owner operator of your own rental property, then you're good to go. Now, yes, you are going to have to, stay on top of the news as far as what's happening and the new laws and new changes, but you still have to have a policy and a procedure in place for all the other categories. So for today, I wanted to talk to you and the viewers in regards to the move-out process, right?
And before you talk about the move-out process, that's very helpful to bring that bigger scope or bigger picture for us to realize. Jeff, before you get into it, tell us a little bit about you, your background, your company, how long you've been doing it, and share with us for those who don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a real estate broker in the state of California. To do property management, you have to be a licensed broker. Main thing is because you're dealing with other people's money, also known as trust funds. And when you're dealing with other people's money, you have to have a license as a real estate broker. So I've been in the real estate business a total of 7 years. I started out as a sales agent, and then about 2 years ago, I transitioned over into property management. But prior to that, I had a little sabbatical as far as getting out of the sales market and going into property management, which is a lot of where I got my start. I actually went to go work for a 282-unit building, an apartment building, for a property management company. I was working on site in the city of Orange. I'm not going to name the community name and or company, but that leads into this, because one of the first things I learned there as we were going is, let's just say you have a 5% vacancy at all times, right? Which is a good number. So you do the math, 282, and I did it right before the call, 5% of 282 units is 14.1. So let's just call it 14 units. What that says that every single month at this building, we had 14 people that were moving out, and so 14 vacancies, right, that we were trying to get filled in. So
what would you say your average is I mean,
What's
it's
that?
going to be different for the different units, but what's the average vacancy for, I don't know,
I would say
it
it's
ranges?
about 5%. And even if you take a look at, single family residences, right, you're going to have a vacancy factor of 5%. Now, that may not be every single year,
Mm,
but you think about it as an individual. So the numbers are, if you have a residential property, condo, townhome, single family residence, you're going to have your residents stay on average 3 years in the rental, right? But keep in mind, now that's only if you have one. If you have, say, 10, you're going to start feeling a lot more of that vacancy factor, because it's fair to say that maybe not all 10 will be occupied at the same time. You may be having a turn on one or two of those units at a time. When you start getting into, say, 100 doors under management, you feel that as an operator, as far as like, hey, how many do you have vacant, and you have to go through the turn process and lease renewals and all that. So going back to the example, at this massive building, we had to go through 14 turns every single month, right? Yeah, 14 people that are moving out, 14 units that need to be that you need to go through the turn process, and 14 new leases to try to get those filled in. And that's kind of where you see the resident life cycle, where it literally goes in a loop, right? The turn process with leasing and residents moving in, residency, and back to move outs, lease renewals and such. So that's where I got my start. I loved it. Every single day you had problems coming at you, people coming into the office, calling in. But the thing I liked about it is that every single problem had a written solution, right? It had a script. Like, hey, this comes at you, this is what you do. This comes at you, this is what you do. So I learned to like it. From there, I decided, hey, you know what? I don't like working for a company. I learned that really quickly. So with the skill set of being self-employed, having the license already, I decided to get my broker's license and start servicing individual owners that may have 1, 2, 3 rental homes. And so right now, as of today, we're a small operation. We manage a total of 32 rental properties, and that's a combination of single-family residences, condominiums, townhomes. The biggest building we have right now is a fourplex. So as you can see, it's it's geared to the residential properties.
makes sense. Makes sense. And you wanted to focus more on today the topic of move out, the move in, move out, or specifically the move out process within the life cycle.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today. Like I said, the resident life cycle has 4 stages. To just briefly share with you in regards to numbers, out of the 32 that we have going to COVID-19 and how that's affected us, we've only had 2 households, so less than 10%, where they've notified us about losing their job for one of the households, and the second household having a reduction in pay. So what we're doing is we're renegotiating the lease for a short period of time to make a reduction in the rent. We're not eliminating it, but we're just reducing it, going for there.
Question for you: how proactive were you? I mean, each of your investors or landlords or owners will have a different philosophy on this. But how proactive were you, or what's your suggestion? Because some people are like, I'm not going to bring it up. If it happens, they'll come up to me. Or some people are like, the day of when you heard about the stock markets, or the day of when you heard of sheltering in place, they spoke with their tenants and had that difficult conversation. How proactive do you get?
That's a good question. And so let's back up. I think for a property manager, right now it's on a month-to-month basis, and that you have a checkpoint like at the beginning of every month, which it's coming right around the corner. So with that said, I remember at the end of March, I put together a short video. I sent it to all of our owners saying, hey, we're going to cross a checkpoint April 1st and just see who is paying, who is not. Beautiful things about property management software is that you can have a resident portal where the resident is set up to pay automatically via account number, routing number, debit card, credit card. And for us, the charges get posted as of the 25th. So I was surprised that about 1/3 of the people, this is, even though we have that feature in management, I never really started tracking it up until now, because I'm curious, like, hey, every person that pays is a win for one of the owners we help. So about 1/3 of the people actually pay before the first. And then another third of the residents pay on the first. And then the last third, trickles in between the second and third. But the point is I told them, look, we don't know who's going to pay. If they bring it up to us, we will have a conversation. So what I did as far as just being proactive was on the third who hadn't paid, we reached out to them and just checked in. And so sure enough, it happened to be those two families, those two households. Usually we don't call, they're very aware of the policy as far as, hey, when rent is late and what the late fee is. So from this perspective, I reached out to them and they said that was the case. And I think that's the challenge for most residents, because most people, if they have a good paying history, are good-hearted, goodwill, they want to pay. But from their perspective, they only have two choices. Either A, they're going to pay rent as usual and then be good to go, or B, they're going to stop paying. So in being able to have these conversations with them, I told them, like, look, we're wanting to work with you and making it a win-win. And if you offer people a reduction, they can still feel like they're staying on top of their obligations without having to completely say, hey, I'm just going to choose not to pay at all. So that's what we did for us. And I've talked to the owners and I tell them, look, if we can verify on their behalf that the person has had a loss of income, completely lost their income, let's go ahead and reduce the rent by 50%. It's a big number, but it's better for them to collect something than nothing. Most people have savings. The question is how much or how little. That's up to them to decide. But that works. And then if they just had a reduction in pay, we've been making a suggestion of 35%. And again, it's up to the owner. Every owner is different. Sure enough, for the two that we have where the resident had a reduction and then a loss in pay, they went ahead and agreed to the number. But yeah, I mean, that's as far as how it's affected us, two out of 32 altogether. So
that's good. That's good to hear in regards to just the strategy, the game plan, and you're providing the solutions to the landlord, right? The landlords are the ones, or the owners are going to be the ones to make that final call. But at least, like you're saying, there's a middle ground. It's not just all or nothing. There could be something in the middle, and that's really cool that you guys make solutions that way.
Yep. Yeah. At this point, all of them have, because what's the alternative, right? For both parties, the owner can't kick them out at this point, right? They can't go through eviction, and the resident's not going to move out. But same thing, I think about it from their perspective. Who wants to stop paying on something, especially if they have a good track record? It's not the type of person just to say, hey, I'm going to stop paying just because I want to. So I think at this point, it's a win-win.
I'm sure there's property owners that are out there, and this is sort of a tangent, it's basing off of that, but those who can't pay and you try to negotiate and they're not willing to, what do you do in that scenario? How would you advise a property owner in that case?
So sorry, say that one more time. As far as the owner's not willing to?
No. The tenant lost their job, and then the owner comes with these solutions, 50% off of rent, and the tenant's like, I appreciate the solution, but I still can't pay or I won't pay. And at the same time, you can't evict them, right? So how would you go about that situation? If that were
good question. And there's a lot of different scenarios. In all transparency for us, we're a small operation and we get all of our legal advice. And I think I mentioned this last time from an attorney's office called KTS, Kimball, Tyree, and St. John. They specialize in landlord-tenant, in the landlord-tenant law. So for us, basically whatever they say goes. If we ran into that situation, I would call them to seek legal advice and see what's going on. I know right now there's a lot of talk about legislation passing. The one that I heard is, hey, let's just take the rent, reduce it just across the board, across California by 25%, and have that be the new norm. Look, there's a whole bunch of scenarios. I would say seek legal counsel to whomever's out there looking for that, because you share the same issue with two different people. They're going to give you two different answers. So as it pertains to that, I would say, hey, seek legal counsel.
And that's a proposal that's coming up onto a ballot, right? In regards to reducing rent by 25% across the board.
Yes, yes. And I share this with you. I'm of the mentality of, I know that there is a lot of information, uh, coming as far as legislation. So I like to get informed once it passes, not so much leading up to it, because there could be so many changes. Even if it's proposed, today, right before it gets passed, they make some changes, they add some stuff, remove some stuff. So, um, like I said, mentioned before, I like to find out what the actual bill was when it passes and
Makes
go
sense.
from there.
Yeah, because you can't really do anything about it. You can strategize, you can talk all about it, but until it actually passes or don't pass, then
Right,
that's when you make your moves, or that's when you can
right,
strategize.
yeah.
So talk to us a little more about the move out cycle and the experiences, or for those who are currently landlords, and what they should be thinking about when your tenant is moving out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go over the first thing. In my experience in talking to owners, that are self-managing. One of the biggest things that I see is, and let's just go through a hypothetical, right? Let's just say the move out day is here at the end of April, and they schedule a time to get the keys from the tenant, and they schedule a time to get the keys from the tenant, and the first time that they're literally seeing the property is the day that they move out. And the question is, hey, look, you're going to have a vacancy, right? From the day that someone moves out, you're going to go through the turn process to get it on the market as quickly as possible, and then you're going to start the leasing process from there. But if you're seeing the property for the first time the day that the tenant moves out, you're already behind the eight ball. So let's talk about the turn process in the simplest form. And let's go back to the apartment community that I used to work at, right? Because these were apartments, not single-family residences, you have the minimum number of items. So it was painting, number one, flooring, number two, a maintenance checklist, number three, and the last item would be the cleaning, right? The deep cleaning and spiff cleaning, depending, but just the category of cleaning altogether. So if you think about it, the painter would come in, they would go have to replace carpet and or shampoo carpet. The technician would have to go through a maintenance checklist, and that's from like, hey, testing out the kitchen sink, the dishwasher, making sure the refrigerator is still working, making sure that all light bulbs are replaced, and it just goes on and so on and so forth, as well as the cleaning. But each of those items take time. What happened was the technician for the community would go in and do a pre-move out inspection 2 weeks before. Well, guess what? This is the same person that knows what they're going to have to work on. So they already know, hey, does the paint look like it needs touch up or not? Does the carpet look like it needs to be replaced or not? Does it look like there's going to be a lot of maintenance where it's going to take us, say, 2 days versus 1 day to go ahead and turn the unit or not? And all of these little things, because you have to get these coordinated, do take time. So if you have the goal to have your turns take anywhere between, say, 5 to 7 business days, right? Because most of the time tradespeople work during the business week. You can find some that work during the weekend. Then that's money in your pocket. If you're only seeing the unit the day after the tenant moves out, you're already behind the eight ball. Now you have to start getting estimates and so forth. So the first thing that I would suggest is do a pre-move out inspection. Now the question is, Jeff, if I'm going to be doing a pre-move out inspection, is the tenant going to be there? Am I going to go ahead and have to answer or dispute all these of these possible move out items? And the answer is yes. But at the end of the day, to have more peace of mind, you want to basically put what we call a move out packet, which it's a packet from you to the tenant, basically saying, hey, we have every intention to refund your full security deposit. Please help us do so. In order to do so, here's the items that you need to do so that we can,
You're prepping them a little bit. You're giving some information that they can read and digest, and they can prepare, instead of everyone has a different experience. Everyone has different things in mind, thinking, oh, wow, okay, they're going to come and ream us for this, that, and the other, and they're going to take away our deposit. But that's not the case. Like you're saying, you're framing the conversation.
Correct. And look, the bottom line is I've never met one resident that moved out and say, hey, please take my deposit. Everybody wants their security deposit back, right? And as they should, A security deposit on the residential side is equal to 1 month's rent. So even on the smallest condo at $2,000, that's still $2,000. At a single family residence, you're looking at $3,000. And if you got, a nice property, it could be more than that. So it's a sizable amount. I get it from a resident's perspective, wanting to get that money. So if you're an owner, help them and help yourself. Because if you are refunding their full security deposit, what you're saying in essence is, hey, the property is good to go. Makes it easy on you, right? So let them be a part of that process to make sure that everything is taken care of. And at the same time, if it's not, you're already letting them know in advance that, hey, these are the items that need to be addressed. So for example, on that,
they can address it. They can try to fix it, or they
right.
just prepared that, okay,
Yeah.
my security deposit is going to be dinged. I got to work a little more overtime this week or something.
Exactly. So that's what I would say. And that goes back to, kind of big picture overview on the resident life cycle. Step number 3 is the annual walkthrough. Guess what? When is a resident most likely to move out? At the end of the lease. So if you're doing a walkthrough right before the lease is to check on the property, at that point you will also get to take a look. You're going to see, hey, does it need to be painted? How are the floors looking? Right? Is there a lot of maintenance that I can at least see where it's worth getting the handyman to come out here and give us pricing? And all properties do need a cleaning. That's half a day, plus or minus at best. But usually the painting, if you have to paint the whole unit, that could take up to 3 business days. So you have 3 days there already. Flooring is a 1 day, for the most part, a 1 day turnaround. The maintenance checklist, depending on which handyman you're using, that could be, say, 2 business days. So that's already, say, 3 for painting, 1 for flooring, you're up to 4, plus 2 with the handyman, plus 1, you're already at 6 days. What did I say? 3, 1, 4, that's 6, 7. So you're already at a week, right? And that's best case scenario. So say you did the walkthrough before and you know that you're going to have to paint, you're going to have to do that. Then the next thing would be to go ahead and get your vendors to schedule a time with your resident so that they can go walk the unit before, give you the estimate so you already know. And guess what? For them, if you're telling them about 2 weeks before, plus or minus, you're more likely to be able to get on their schedule right away because they're booking you, 2 weeks in advance or so. So now we went from like, hey, we're going to have to start all this process at the very, very end where they're moving out to you know what work needs to be done. You've scheduled the work already, and now it's just a matter of getting it done.
So no, that was going to be a question I had. It's like, when do you schedule this? Do you schedule a week before they move out and then you do all these things? Actually, that's very helpful. Just working backwards. If it takes about 7 to 14 business or 7 to 10 business days to get all these things done, and you need to get quotes, or you need them to come out and try to schedule in advance, maybe 2+ weeks of being able to do that, doing the walkthrough, the final walkthrough would be helpful. At the same time, some people like myself, I'm pretty last minute on packing things, or maybe there's boxes everywhere and you don't want to be moving their stuff. Hopefully they're there so they can move their boxes so you can take a look at the condition of the carpet or the floors or walls or whatever it may be. But at the same time, some people are like, it is what it is. And you won't notice it until they actually fully move out. So what's your suggestions there? In the sense that people who aren't fully moved out and you're doing an inspection, you can get a glimpse, but you don't know the whole picture.
Good question. So let's go through that. Most of the time, let's go from two perspectives, right? So if I'm the property manager for a rental, we're actually doing that annual walkthrough, not for the purpose of move out, but just for the purpose, assuming best case scenario that the resident is going to renew the lease. We're doing that walkthrough 60 days before, 2 months before. So I have a pretty good idea as to the condition of the home. On the flip side, if an owner is doing their own walkthrough, right, and let's just say they're not in the habit of doing an annual walkthrough, they're only going to do this because the resident said, hey, you know what, I'm choosing to move out. I would suggest to do the walkthrough at least, say, 30 days before. That way they can start planning with vendors accordingly. But even if they did it 2 weeks before, they still have enough time to get ahead. to get ahead. But going back to what you said, look, when you do a walkthrough on the property, places where that don't get affected as much are going to be, say, like the living room, family room, because there's usually no furniture against it. If you see that those walls look pretty good, there's no need to schedule a painter, right, to be painting complete rooms altogether. Depending on the skill set of your handyman, this handyman could do some touch-up painting and just say, paint a couple of walls individually. He's not going to be painting the entire house and or entire rooms. Usually that'll be from one wall to another and say, hey, we just need you to paint this one wall in this one bedroom and then these two walls in this other bedroom, and then go from there. So that can get added to the handyman that goes. So if you're looking at the categories, right, so you got the painter, the flooring, the handyman and or contractor, depending on skill set and work, and then the cleaning company. So if it's a lot, give it to the painter. If it's a little bit, the handyman can go ahead and get that taken care of.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Are you seeing anything in regards to COVID, in regards to the standard the home needs to be in before another tenant moves into the property? Does it need to be, are there any, or not necessarily disclosures, but are there any requirements the property needs to be in before moved in by a new tenant?
Good question. I think that really depends. Well, let's go back. In my experience, depending on the personality of the resident will play a big part as far as how much or how concerned they may or may not be. Meaning, if you're an owner out there and you yourself clean it, you and your family, let's just say, they may not, and the personality of that individual, they may not ask, they may not care. They may still come into the property and do a cleaning themselves. With that said, for us, we have a third-party company that does all our cleanings. I shared it with last time, Dirt Busters, and they go through a process, a very detailed process as far as getting that cleaned, cleaning as well as disinfecting after they clean to give someone peace of mind. So I would definitely make a recommend for owners to utilize third-party services. But if not, they want to consider not only cleaning but disinfecting after the fact to give the resident peace of mind.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Anything else that landlords or property owners who are renting it out need to consider for the move out process?
Yeah, so let me go through my list here. All right, so we talked about doing a pre-move out inspection, right? You want to get that done, whether it's 30 days before or 2 weeks before. Just know that the more time you give yourself, the sooner you do this, the more time you're giving yourself for the next phase, which is going to make, put more money in your pocket. You're shortening the vacancy factor. So we talked about the pre-move out inspection. Best case scenario, you already have your vendors go out to the property and give you the estimates, right? So we get to the next checkpoint, which is the date of move out. So just as a suggestion for us, and if you're an owner self-managing, you may want to consider this. If you recall the last time you moved, which we moved last year, it is hectic. For as much as we help people in this business, especially on the management, we're just seeing people all the time, move in and move out. Once you go through that yourself, you're like, man, this is a really tough time. Think about this. They have hundreds of things to do, right? And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to coordinate a time to get keys from them. Well, hey, if they got up quickly, you don't want to be there first thing in the morning to meet them or say, hey, at 6, 7 p.m. at night. So what we do is a couple of days before, I would suggest to get a combination lockbox. You could have a conversation with them and say, hey, I'm going to be leaving this at the gas meter, at the water pipe. We're going to program it to a code that they choose. And you could do so from the combination lockboxes from Home Depot, which you can change the code. You leave it there and you say, hey, the code is 4321. You can place the key in the lockbox the day of your move out, whenever. And then
maybe a different combo code, but that was just hypothetical. I understand. I've seen people do 0000, 1234. Just like make it a little more creative, just for security purposes. Okay, I know it's hard to remember. Just put it on some place where you'll be able to refer to it, but make the combo lockbox a little more secure than just that.
The last 4 of your social. There you go.
There it is.
There it is. No, but yeah, so you choose the code, right, or let them choose the code, right? You can program the lockbox. They're super simple to program. But yeah, you just leave it there. You leave it there. You tell them, hey, you know, the day of your move out, I know that you may be moving at it, or they may not even know what time they're shooting to move out, right? It makes it easy on them. They can leave the key in the lockbox and off they go. They give you a call or send you a text, and then you're good to go. Now, for us, just to give you an idea, all of our leases end on Sundays at 11:59 p.m. That means it gives them the entire weekend to move out, which is a win for them. And also it's a win for us because we know that we can plan the turn process accordingly. Guess what I do every single Monday morning afterwards, after that a lease, every time after a lease finishes? I'm there. I know, like, hey, I could start my turn process Monday mornings at 8 o'clock. So I'll show up, go ahead and get the key. I will reprogram the lockbox, right, so that they can no longer get in after that. And the first thing you want to do is you want to take pictures. You want to take a lot of pictures. We take anywhere between 100 to 150 pictures every time we go to the property, because look, best case scenario, you wasted your time and nothing happens. Worst case scenario, the pictures you just took are going to help you if a resident is disputing, you know, some of the charges that you may have. So you take your pictures, you put that, say, on Google Drive, you share that link with the owner, or if you're the owner, yeah, right, you just have the pictures there. But you also have a placeholder, because now in the event that you have the resident contesting the move-out charges, you can go ahead and share that with them, right? Same thing if you have any video. So you want to do that, you notate it. At this point, you know, hopefully your vendors are already lined up, and then they can get access to the property, provide them the code. You don't have to be there. You can you can let them know.
It's very seamless. That process is very seamless, instead of having to coordinate and schedule. And then, because if you're not managed, or if you don't have a property manager and you're just working full time, then you're not going to be able to take time off during lunch break or after work. And that might not work with the vendor. You already have everything set up. It's a great process.
Yeah. Yeah, the key is to try to minimize, right, time off market, or even time off from the marketing process for the next one, the leasing. So that's going to help you. The next thing is let's talk about security deposit accounting. So you want to make sure here in the state of California, you have up to 21 days to make sure that you go over the security deposit accounting, and that you get that back to the resident, that you mail it at their last address. Best case scenario, they give that to you, you can do it. But even if they didn't provide a forwarding address, then just mail it to the residents, right? Mail it to the property, and that's going to suffice that. But it's very important, because if you miss over that 21 days, then they can start contesting it and saying, hey, well, you didn't, you know, follow the 21-day rule. Now, for us, we really try to get that done within the first week, right? Even it's good practice to get a copy of the invoices and provide those along with the security deposit with the accounting form, so that they can say, hey, yes, you know, we did pay Dirt Busters X amount to go out there and clean the property. It's not just a number that we're making up. But that's always good. If they contest it, then that's where the pictures come in. You can go ahead and share those. And we've had instances where, you know, they said, hey, wait a minute, you know, the property was clean. The property was clean when I moved out, and now you're charging us X for cleaning. And then you show the pictures, and then they're like, and you never hear back from them, right? They just basically say, okay.
Yeah. That's so funny.
You know, but yeah, that would be the next thing as far as security deposit. Last one that I can share with you is, most utility companies are going to have some sort of agreement where the utilities can go back automatically to your name once the resident moves out. And they're called CSAs, Continuous Service Agreement. It may have a different name based on the utility company that you work with. But I believe here in Southern California, SoCal has one, Edison has one. Those are probably the biggest utility companies. From there, the city may have their own name for it. but you want to make sure that you update or that you let the utility company know beforehand that you're going to have your resident move out as of their move out date so that you can continue service. And that's important. If you have the vendors coming in, right? If you're going to be showing the property moving forward, you want to have the lights on and the water running and so forth. So that would be the last item that I would say, hey, it's good to have. And a lot of times people forget.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. If do you happen to have this like checklist in a written form where if someone's asking for it, we just provide them like a screenshot of it?
We have one for what part? For what part?
Or just like how the move out process. There's multiple steps that you need to consider. Like the 60 days or 30 days before they move out, you need to be walking through the property, and then taking pictures once they move out, getting the lockbox, making sure the appliances and all the utilities have been changed. Is there like a checklist there that's, if someone asks for, that we can provide?
We do. We do have a move out checklist for us. Now, of course, they can take it and tweak it, make it their own. Keep in mind that the checklist that we have is from the perspective of a property manager, right? So if an owner is self-managing, they would just take it and tweak it for them. The information is there, absolutely, but they would just need to go ahead and tweak it for them and make it work for them. The one I really think, and we have that as well, is the maintenance one. There is nothing that will take a lot of time, or that it can take a lot of time as far as the maintenance. Because if you think about it, is you got to check every little item, right? The handyman, from the handyman's perspective, every item that you add on there is another, mini sale for him. But the point is, whether you do that yourself, whether you have a handyman that you trust that's going to go through the property with you, that's probably one of the most important ones. So we do have one. It's very simple, but it's effective. You just basically has every room a breakdown. So, for example, for this room, it would have, hey, does it have a smoke detector? You basically check yes. Or if you want to do it the other way, where it's like, hey, unless you check it, right, it means that you need to address it. So again, example, the smoke detector, if it needs one, you would check the mark. Is there any holes in the drywall, right? You would check if it did. Are the blinds broken? Do they need to be replaced? You would check the blind. The window, is it easy to open? Is it easy to close? Everything that you go through, the more work you do up front, the less work you're going to get when the resident moves in, because these are the things that they're going to be calling you on and saying, hey, my window, it's super hard to open and close. Well, guess what? That could have been done cheaper with the handyman while he was already there on the property for a day or two, to get those things done. So that's a checklist that we have that would be beneficial.
Great. And Jeff, thank you so much for your time. To wrap this up, for those who are owners who are managing it themselves, and they're thinking about maybe finding a property manager, how would you advise them? What would you talk to them about in regards to what to look for, or just how to think through that process?
Good question. So, what's funny in regards to that I've seen in the property management industry anyway, it's if someone wanted to put their property for sale, right? Or if they wanted to buy a property, it's very likely that they'll interview, 2 or 3 agents, especially when they're looking to sell, right? Because it's a big deal for them. But when it comes to property management, a lot of times they just go with the first company. So first things I would say, interview, 2 or 3 different companies just to get an idea as to their service, their pricing, how everything works for them. And in that interview, I would just ask questions as far as like, hey, tell me about the policies and procedures. I have seen more often that an owner will just hire a property management company without really asking them what their policies and procedures are about the process, only to find out at a later time how they actually operate, right? And not necessarily that's a bad thing, but had they asked the questions up front, they would have known. So that would be my suggestion. Interview 2 or 3 different property management companies and just ask, hey, how do you guys go about your process for move outs? What's the process for leasing? What's the process for residency? What's the process for lease renewals? And then that way they would have a better idea as to how that manager is going to operate the property.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Jeff, if people want to find out some more information or had some questions for you, where best can they reach you?
Yes, they could just give me a call, send me a text message, or send me an email. My direct phone number is 714-916-2880. Again, that's 714-916-2880. Or they can send me an email. The name of our property management company is Good Steward Property Management. So my email address is Jeff at GoodStewardPM.com. Steward spelled out STEWARD as in David, and then PM as in propertymanager.com.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, again, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, so I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about the move-out process within the property management lifecycle. Hope you and your family stay safe, and thanks again.
All right, have a good one, Will.
Talk to you later, man. See ya.
Bye.